I wanted to say a little bit about the strategy and position that the UK government finds itself in, how that fits in with strategies and tactics being used by the hard right more globally and more generally, and try and link that to I think a bigger picture of what's happening internationally regarding relations between different capitalist states and rising imperialist tensions. What I have to say isn't very positive. I don't really have very much in the way of good news or ideas of what to do. But this is kind of how I see things at the moment, and I think it's important to sort of understand why the government and the right are doing what they're doing. So hopefully this will be useful in that regard, if nothing else. I want to start with the Tories now, really, and we've got a government that was elected with a very solid majority of 80 this time last year. And it was elected on a very simple slogan of getting Brexit done. And I think that's all it really wanted to do. I think that was very much Boris Johnson's number one focus. And I think he thought it would be reasonably straightforward. The big problems that his predecessor, Theresa May, faced were very much down to a combination of little or nothing in the way of a parliamentary majority and a very ideologically split Conservative Party. There were people who were very, very hard Brexiters. There were people who wanted a soft Brexit or didn't want to leave the EU at all. And that was a situation caused entirely by May's own mismanagement. She called the election in 2017, thought she was going to cruise it, and instead Corbyn managed to knock out her majority completely. Johnson, in contrast, has quite a solid majority in Parliament, and I think that really means he can kind of do what he likes, you know, even if, for instance, he has to patch together a last-minute deal with the EU to sort out trade as Britain exits. He could do that. He could do that. Of course, the hard right of the Conservative Party, the Mark Francois and people like that of the world will moan and complain, but with majority of 80, he will get it passed. So I don't think he saw himself as having any problems with that. What has happened since then, of course, is the COVID pandemic, which I think has completely derailed his idea of essentially just getting Brexit done and having an easy life and basking in the glory. This is kind of the COVID pandemic is something that requires a level of attention to detail and a level of government intervention, which I don't think the sort of hollowed out neoliberal state that Boris Johnson has inherited and would have liked to continue is really capable of dealing with. So we've seen this kind of, you know, lurching from one strategy to another, 1 minute saying herd immunity, the next minute saying lockdown, 1 minute saying everyone go out to pubs and restaurants, the next minute saying no, don't do that. And also the kind of the ongoing farce around trying to roll out testing and apps and so on, all of which kind of get delivered through sort of shady business operations like Serco and often don't work or are mired in a kind of corruption that I think over a period of months has started to genuinely wear away at Boris Johnson's ratings and his general it certainly meant that a section of the Conservative vote, the right-wing vote in this country, that he managed to consolidate behind him this time last year. And it is important to stress that that's what Boris Johnson did this time last year. The vote he got and the majority he got came from seeing off UKIP as a threat and pulling together the far right and the standard Conservative vote behind him. This is exactly the same trick that he pulled off in 2008 to become London mayor. So the fact that he has this appeal to like both wings of the right, I think put him in a good place for most of this year, even as the pandemic started to unfold. His ratings stayed high, and they've only just started to kind of to get knocked. And I think that's really coming at a time when the fact that the government was not really elected with any kind of serious strategy has come to bite him in quite a major way. You can sort of faff about and sort out some negotiations and get Brexit done. That would have been possible without the pandemic, but the pandemic has changed that. And now we're in a kind of world where having some kind of top-down ruling class strategy becomes quite necessary. And that's not something that Johnson is good at or that the Conservatives have. Really, the situation for the past 5 years of the ruling class in Britain has been to be knocked back and forth from one crisis to the next. Pete was talking about the situation in Scotland. Sorry, the dog is very excited by the doorbell. Sorry, the situation in Scotland, which really, what happened there was that Cameron called an election, called a referendum that he thought he could win easily without any kind of difficulty whatsoever, and of course he almost lost it. And then that was followed up by another gamble on the EU referendum, which again he thought he would win without any difficulty, and of course actually did lose it, and that was the end of his career. And really, ever since then, you've had a situation where the ruling class doesn't want to do what it's being forced to do. It's forced to rely on a wing of the Conservative Party that was pro-Brexit, not because it has much faith in these people's abilities, but because those are the only people who can deliver a kind of enough of a political block behind them to actually ensure that you have a government that stays in power. And I think that is a pattern that you're seeing around the world in lots and lots of different places. I think that was really the pattern that you saw that got Trump into power. The Republicans did not really want Trump to be their candidate in 2016, fought tooth and nail to try to stop that, but couldn't stop it because no other candidate could actually pull people behind them in the same way and have that kind of popular appeal that is necessary in a democracy to actually get into power. So kind of reluctantly went along with it. And now that Trump has gone, I don't think that kind of national populism that got him elected has gone away or will go away. I don't think the Republicans are going to somehow shift back into the center again. I don't think that's an option for them. Once you've had won elections on the basis of this kind of national populism, the dial kind of ratchets up. And so that's why I think that both in this country and in the States, you're seeing the right being very much kind of pushed down the road or whipping up culture wars, becoming kind of more nakedly racist to specific immigrant groups, and also ratcheting up a kind of nationalist rhetoric around trade as well, which I think is really significant. Because I think that one of the reasons why this national populism, this right populism,
got 5 minutes left, Pat.
How much was that?
5.
Fabulous. That's all I need. One of the reasons why that kind of national populism is becoming such a feature of governments around the world is that the previous epoch, through the 90s and noughties, that was really the sort of, the high point of a kind of globalized neoliberalism, where we were just basically meant to just get more and more frictionless free trade around the world. This was meant to extend and extend and extend, and this would slowly raise the prosperity of the whole world. That model is dead now. That rising prosperity is not happening. Instead, it's led to massive inequalities everywhere and large amounts of resentment. The technocratic kind of neoliberal class that oversaw that period is discredited in the eyes of populations, whatever their political complexion. And I think someone like Tony Blair in this country is deeply unpopular, both on the left and on the right, for almost for similar reasons. So, and this has also expressed itself in terms of ratcheting up of international tensions. I think that throughout the Trump administration, we saw the kind of Cold War between the US and China getting hotter and hotter and hotter and getting more and more angry. And this is despite Trump's kind of instincts to cut deals and to wind down international pressures. I don't think the transition from Trump to Biden is going to make very much difference in terms of US foreign policy. I think it will continue to prosecute a very hardline stance against China. The paranoia about Russia it's completely infected the Democratic Party, the top brass of it at any rate. I don't think it's even going to change its relations to the EU that much beyond warm words. At the end of the day, Germany is signing a deal with Russia for gas supplies. America is against that. That big picture is going to colour their relations with the European Union, which America quite correctly sees as a sort of, an extension of a trade bloc surrounding Germany more than anything else. So yeah, I think we aren't going to see a great deal of change in terms of the overall foreign policy in America. I think there'll be a change of style of government. It looks like Biden has basically assembled a cabinet that is like a rainbow coalition of neoliberals. One of every single different, it looks very diverse, but ideologically it's hard on the hard right of the Democratic Party. And you will see an attempt to kind of reassert this sort of technocratic control. I will be surprised if it's popular or it lasts, or that it makes any kind of dent against this sort of Trumpist populism that is still, as the closeness of the election showed, a very strong force in America. Here in Britain, I see really the Conservatives being buffeted from pillar to post by events, as they have been for the past few months. I don't think they're going to get a strategy or a direction out of nowhere, but they will be able to rely upon an extremely weak and divided opposition. I think Starmer's Labour Party is wholly 100% focused on removing the last traces of socialism from the Labour Party. It doesn't really care about winning an election. It's much more interested in appearing respectable to the middle classes and rescuing Labour's reputation as the sort of the B team for the British ruling class. So now I might be wrong about that. There might Boris Johnson might trip up on something. There might be a similar kind of shift to what we've seen in America, whereby people kind of have had their fill of Boris Johnson and somewhat reluctantly move back towards the neoliberal political centre in a way that they've done in the States. But I don't see that as a long-term shift or a long-term option. The big picture of rising international tensions, rising trade wars, rising risk of war. I mean, I have to say this. I think you know, when you get nationalist movements around the world in each imperial centre, rising trade tensions, previously that's the situation that can lead to wars. And of course, the big backdrop of all of this is not just the global pandemic, but a global ecological crisis that's becoming, you know, that's really beginning to start to bite now. So that's it's not a pretty picture by any means. But I think that's what's going on in terms of the general dynamics of capitalism, and each nation state and each bourgeoisie within those nation states are fitting into that as best they can. That's what you're seeing in Britain that explains the kind of hegemony of the Boris Johnson right here. And it's what you're seeing in many places around the world. The question for us as socialists is how to articulate some kind of mass resistance movement rooted in class politics to all of this, because there's a desperate need for a real alternative. And what the technocratic liberals of the centre are currently supplying is not going to cut it. And I'll end there.